Patients first, people always. It is 100% focused on making patients better. It's putting patients at the center of everything we do, and always patients first.
Welcome to Leading Beyond the Lab. We have Chris. Chris has got a wide range of career that spans clinical experience, big pharma with Takeda, and moved through various biotechs as a CMO, head of clinical development. One thing that stands out about your experience is that you're super adaptable. Do you think that's a key trait for any experienced drug developer?
Oh, 100%. It's a requirement. In the modern era, having a broad range of experience that inform your abilities to develop new drugs is critical. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a principle in Buddhism about the beginner's mind. It's walking up to a new situation and loving it as if it were your first time. So our unit in San Francisco took care of kids born with congenital heart defects. So I'm the kind of physician neonatologist who I'm in there, right? Doing the procedures, taking care of the kids, talking to the families. Found the perfect balance, seeing sick kids in the neonatal ICU and then being able to think about their disease and translating what I was doing in the lab into potential ideas to explore in the science that could potentially make these kids better. And I love that part. So it's possible to learn from failure.
Yeah.
And just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because the data are good doesn't mean it's great. It doesn't mean that this is a drug.
If you were going to give one bit of advice for someone who's looking to move from the clinic into industry, what would that bit of advice be?
Two key ones.
Yeah.
And then there's a third, which we'll get into. Number one.
Welcome to Leading Beyond the Lab. Here we have Chris, who's joining us. Chris has got a wide range of career that spans clinical experience, big pharma with Takeda, and moved through various biotechs as a CMO and head of clinical development, and currently with Astria Therapeutics. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So happy to be here. Yeah, my name is Chris Morabito. I'm a chief medical officer at a company called Astria Therapeutics. I have been in the space for a very long time, and I'm thrilled to be here and share a bit about that.
Well, to start with, it would be great for the audience to hear a little bit from your own words about your journey.
It's a long journey. Good. So happy to share. So I started off wanting to be an astronaut, and that didn't work out for a variety of reasons. I ended up pursuing biology like most people who enter the medical field in college. Love the science, still to this day. And when I entered medical school, I had full intention of being an academician. I wanted a lab, I wanted to do science, I wanted to dig in deep and fully immerse myself in the scientific discovery in biology. And then also have an MD. And then when I found out I found out through just taking care of patients that truly my love was looking for ways to make each individual patient healthier. And I didn't take long for me to fall in love with pediatrics because that was a discipline in which I could work not just to improve the health of the individual baby, kid, patient, but also their family and potentially their community. And I ended up pursuing pediatrics in residency. And then in fellowship, I focused in neonatology. But it was in fellowship when I started digging more deeply back into the science. So I practiced neonatology and learned neonatology at UC San Francisco. And I did my postdoc fellowship at the Cardiovascular Research Institute and focused on cardiovascular development in a great lab with great mentors in neonatology, great mentors in science. Really loved it. Found the perfect balance, I thought, at the time of seeing sick kids in the neonatal ICU and then being able to think about their disease and translating what I was doing in the lab, which was cardiovascular development itself, into potential ideas to explore in the science that could potentially make these kids better overall. So like many of us who try academic careers, you find out pretty quickly that getting a grant in an academic career is really tough.
Yeah.
I spent a year applying for and ultimately getting a K-08 grant from the NIH to fund my continued development as a physician scientist, and said at the end of that damn, that was really hard. I don't think I could do this for the rest of my life. I actually really enjoy taking care of patients. So I left academics and I went straight into a clinical career. And I went from a fellowship as a clinical instructor at UC San Francisco to chief of neonatology at a center associated with Penn State University. Practiced for a long time and got very good in the clinic, got very comfortable taking care of patients and babies, but then ultimately started asking, what is it that I can do more? What could I think about that, hey, listen, I love medicine. I love the science. How can I go to the next level? And ultimately that turned out for me to be going into industry, going into pharmaceuticals, and then ultimately now into biotechnology. And it's ultimately, for me, a principled decision in that I continue to strive to want to do what I can for individual people and then ultimately communities of patients.
Yeah.
And I want to be in a position in which I can continue to ask questions and use scientific tools to answer those questions. And certainly you can do that in medicine. But for me, being in biotech now, or even being in pharma when I was in pure, pharmaceuticals, pharmaceutical companies, you're able to think about large numbers of populations, not large populations, but large numbers of populations all at once. You could think about, in our company now, we have at least 2 populations of people that we're thinking about constantly. Whereas in practice, while you get to see individual patients who might have different diseases, they're still individual patients. Maybe their families, maybe their immediate communities. But in where we are now in biotech or in pharma, it's really thinking, how is it that I can make large populations of people better? And then ultimately that translates, at least in the possibility of making the population in general healthier. And that's super cool. And I feel privileged to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's inspiring, really. And when you were a neonatologist, out of interest, did you treat a specific type of disease or?
So I trained with a focus in, I'll call it neonatal cardiology. So our unit in San Francisco took care of kids born with congenital heart defects. We also had a pretty active fetal surgery program, which was amazing. And my focus, my interest, at least when I was in San Francisco, was in kids with congenital heart disease, the preoperative management, the postoperative management, transitioning their care from the neonatal period to longer term care. Prematurity was less of a focus for me when I was in training. It became more of a focus for me as I left academics and moved into academic community medicine.
And one of the things that stood out for me about your profile is that you started almost at the commercial end.
I did.
So
I did. So here I am. I'm a neonatologist, right? And it's not like there's a lot of drugs being developed for neonates, right? Or even kids in general. There are some for sure, especially in rare diseases, but the majority of new drugs are developed for non-pediatric populations, non-pediatric patients. So I reached out into a network of mine and I started asking around for opportunities, and I was fortunate to be able to identify some roles in medical affairs that were interesting. So that's where I started. And in medical affairs, you have the ability to learn about what pharmaceuticals as an industry, as a career path is. You get to see a lot. You get to participate in all kinds of discussions. You get to learn about all kinds of different diseases. You get to understand the vocabulary of drug development. Medical affairs is wonderful. The challenge I had with medical affairs was that I was answering other people's questions.
Yeah.
So people gave me the data and I was supposed to talk about it, right? There was very little opportunity to say, hey, these are the data. Ooh, it's a cool question. Let's see if we could do this experiment.
Yeah.
So I then, after doing medical affairs for a bit, got comfortable with what the space was about, went to Merck to learn how to do drug development. And Merck is, at least at the time, was an amazing place for me and for many. It seems like most people in drug development today have some tie to Merck. I was working at the Rahway campus in New Jersey, which was a large R&D hub. I focused in cardiovascular disease while there, and quickly was exposed to everything there is to know about how to develop a new medicine, from identifying the target in the research space to working with the research colleagues to develop an IND application, doing the early phase clinical trial research with the clinical pharmacologists. And my focus at the time was clinical development. So upon identifying essential clinical pharmacology principles, taking the new drug candidate into patient trials, and then exploring effectiveness all the way through ultimately drug approval, and then post-approval clinical trials to establish further life cycle management for those individual assets and ultimately provide value back to the brand. So I got to see all of that. I was there for 3.5 years. I learned a ton. One of my most formative experiences there was participating in the preparations and then the actual advisory committee meeting with the FDA, where it is, it's a full, almost a year-long effort with a team that's heads down, with a ton of data, with scientific messages, with everyone leaning over your shoulder telling you what to do, but you're focused, you want to get the job done, while working on the new drug application to get it done. It was absolutely incredibly amazing. So stressful, barely saw my wife and my new daughter at the time during those months, but incredibly rewarding. Yeah, so Merck was wonderful. From Merck in cardiovascular disease, I actually went to Sanofi. And it was at Sanofi where I got to try to develop a new drug for neonates, actually. It was a drug meant to prevent RSV infection in kids, in babies. I moved from there into a couple of roles at Sanofi, including one of the drug development leaders in the cardiovascular and diabetes group, focused on diabetes drugs. And then from there, I went to Takeda. And it was at Takeda where I got to, develop and hone leadership skills that ultimately led to my transition into biotech.
So there's clear reasons for going and moving each time?
Clear reasons. I mean, for me, there are clear reasons, right? I made ultimately crisp decisions that I'm quite happy about, but I view it as a continuum, right? Certainly there are discrete events when you go from one company to the next, but for me, it's a journey, right?
And I can imagine that when you go to Sanofi, you kind of, your heart is already tuned into neonatology. So being able to treat and work on the product in that space has been quite rewarding. Which
is one clear reason why I ended up doing that. But that was it was a different job for me as well. It wasn't just working in this particular space that was enthralling. It was actually a new job. So the job at the time was essentially a global program head. So I was in charge of the program from the Sanofi side that we were working on, which focused less on my abilities to be the clinical development head and more on my how is it that I bring everyone together role, right? So it's putting all the pieces together. And this was a program that intended to move pretty quickly from IND into phase 3. I left the program at the end of the phase 1 for a variety of reasons that I won't get into right now. But it was a rapidly moving program with a lot of parts, a lot of people, a lot of oversight because it was a high profile program. Got to see the interworkings of this big multinational French-based company with an office in New Jersey. So part of the fun there was the fun of the organization and the fun of that particular role.
As in the fun of the challenge with the logistics to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the key point where you thought, do you know what, I want to make a difference in the biotech setting?
That didn't come until I was at Takeda. And I'll tell you a bit about the Takeda journey because that's important for the question itself. So I joined Takeda to, again, be a program head, but back in the cardiovascular space. So I learned how to do cardiovascular drug development, learned how to do drug development at Merck, but focused on CV. And my intention of going into Takeda was to pick up a program that was in phase 2 in the cardiovascular space. And ideally, if everything worked well with this particular program, regrow a cardiovascular franchise. And interestingly, and this is one of the core things I learned in drug development, it's possible to learn from failure, right?
Massively,
and in fact, not just possible, you should.
Yeah, the best
learn
way.
From failure. It is. I don't know if it's the best way. Everyone wants.
Well, probably not in a medical setting.
That's right. That's right. And certainly not in a medical setting. But in a drug development setting, it's if you have a failure, you should take the time to learn
reflect.
particular from it. So we took a drug that actually demonstrated potential effectiveness, but it just didn't meet the standards that we were looking for. So ultimately, we decided to stop. And that decision, the process in that decision was, amazing. I got to take off the pure science hat, right, and say, well, beyond the data being good data, what's the potential of this drug to benefit patients? And those are big questions, right?
Yeah.
And just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it's a fundamental thing we all talk about a lot of the time, but certainly applicable in drug development. Just because the data are good doesn't mean it's great. Doesn't mean that this is a drug. So we ultimately decided to stop development on it, and the company itself focused away from cardiovascular disease, which could have gone for me one of two ways. One is, hey, dude, thanks for joining, but sorry, now go look for a new job. Or here, there's some new opportunities in this space. Let's see if you can do something fun there. So fortunately for me, it worked out that I was able to identify a new opportunity within Takeda, and I switched from leading this program after recommending and then supporting a kill decision on the program to lead up the R&D pipeline strategy. And I got to work with all of the therapeutic area heads in the company and research and development in particular on identifying metrics for portfolio growth strategy and so on, but then also work with program teams to help program teams reach those goals, which was very fulfilling, very rewarding. And I was very fortunate to get involved with the Shire acquisition very early on. So Takeda did a bunch of due diligence. This has been written about pretty extensively, and made an offer and ultimately acquired Shire. And I was part of that team from the very beginning, part of the process to make the deal happen.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was transformative for me to be given that opportunity and to be able to participate meaningfully in that process. And then further, I was given the opportunity to lead the integration of the R&D groups. So Shire R&D's group into Takeda's group.
Two big companies.
Two huge R&D organizations with two huge budgets. I had wonderful partners. Georgia Christie, who I'll call out here, was an amazing partner for me leading this integration effort. The entire RMC, which is the R&D management group at Takeda, huge supporters of this whole effort. A lot of work into the integration. You have to identify synergies, which doesn't mean what you think it does unless you're actually doing an integration. It means that you look for ways to save money ultimately for the company.
Yeah.
So we did all of that, and then we were able to execute it. So it was an amazing experience. Ultimately, I think very fulfilling for Takeda, for the community at large, for patients too, because it was now Takeda's and Shire's combined strengths in developing new drugs for patients that the companies focused on collectively together, and that's can't be anything but good. And we see now Takeda thriving, so that's all very good. Out of the R&D integration, I had an opportunity and took it to lead R&D for the plasma-derived therapies business unit, which was a new business unit for Takeda. It came from Shire. We were given the opportunity to take what is fundamentally a underused modality, plasma-derived proteins, and look for new indications for these plasma-derived proteins, and ideally new drugs to develop out of plasma-derived proteins for, in this case, it's almost always hematologic and immunologic diseases. So there are other diseases, of course, that plasma-derived proteins could be used for, but we focused in heme and in immunology. So I got to build this group through the integration itself, identify about 100 people that worked in R&D, put them all together, made them a team.
How did that go? That must be a big challenge.
It was fantastic. I mean, it was.
Do you look at soft skills in that process, or is it just hard skills, or how did you?
Well, I'm not sure I have many soft skills, to be honest. At least that's what I've been told. So, and it took a lot of time to think deeply about this, right? It was about, I'll pause on this point because I think it's super important. It was about developing the right kinds of relationships through the process of integration. And it was about thinking deeply about what kind of team do I need ultimately to be focused on plasma-derived therapy research and development. So, I mean, there was obviously a lot of work that went into the structure of what the organization should look like. What are the functions that we're going to have? What are the functions that Takeda R&D is going to have, or Takeda as an enterprise is going to have that we borrow? So we did a lot of planning, and it wasn't just me, right? I had partners doing this with me through the organization, outside of the organization, to help me think deeply about what the structure is. I had great leadership. Julie Kim was the head of the business unit. She's going to be the CEO of Takeda come next year. So, tremendous leadership there.
Great to learn from as well.
What was that?
Great to learn from.
Oh, great to learn from. Great to learn from. And then the soft skills came in developing those relationships. So meeting people that were functionally experts, but then I felt could contribute meaningfully to the organization itself, not just in terms of their skill set, but also in terms of building the organization, setting up the culture for success within that organization. I looked specifically for people, and I still do this, by the way, who work beyond the job description's boundaries, mm-hmm. who have the ability to say, all right, this is my job. This is what I've been hired to do. I'm going to focus on CMC. Great. But then also can contribute meaningfully to other aspects of what we do. So for us, it was about building a pipeline. So I want that expert in CMC to be able to stand up and say, you know what, there's a lot of opportunity in this space over here. Here's what I think we could do. Mm-hmm. And I could use my CMC team to help us think about extracting this protein in a certain way that could provide ancillary benefits in that particular patient populations. This is all very hypothetical, but that's an example. So that's the kind of talent that I looked for. And so the soft skills, I guess, were
definitely
sure building those relationships and looking for those kinds of people that could ultimately work with me and work together across a team to execute a vision that we were formulating together. So super cool, right? Super cool to be able to build that. But then also to think that, hey, look, I think we ended up with 14 different projects that we were working on right from the beginning. And that meant I was constantly intellectually stimulated, and I got to constantly intellectually challenge my team, who loved it, fortunately. And we went off like gangbusters. Then COVID, right? And things started to change. It was right around the time of COVID. It was even before COVID started where I began to think, all right, I've been in this now for a bunch of years. I'm advancing in my career. I'm feeling really good about where things are going. I feel like the company's in a good spot after this integration. I feel like this R&D group is fairly well established. I need to start thinking about what's next. I didn't expect that I would think about a transition soon after picking up this R&D role at Takeda. But opportunities came up, and they came up pretty good. I mean, right around the time in the middle of COVID and towards the end of 2020, there were increasingly a lot of opportunities as in CMO roles in biotech, and I decided to jump and go into biotech.
Craving that leadership experience as well that you demonstrated in the most recent role in particular.
I went from being the leader of 100
builder
plus, and a builder of 100 plus people organization and multiple projects to working with a very small team with one, maybe two programs. And the benefit of all that was that I got to roll up my sleeves and go back to my roots. So I'm the kind of physician, neonatologist, right, who goes in, has a tie, rolls up sleeves, puts a gown on, scrubs up, and I'm in there, right? I'm in there doing the procedures, taking care of the kids, talking to the families. That's the kind of doctor that I was in there. And I found that increasingly in pharma, I was less in there and more on top of it.
Yeah.
So in biotech now, I'm back in it, right? I'm in there. And I love that part. I do. I mean, I love, for me, the CM role in biotechnology it provides the opportunity to be that leader you want to be, drive the organization scientifically, look for new patient populations to potentially address and hopefully provide benefit to with low risk, and get your hands in there and work intimately to write the protocols, meet the physician leaders in the space, work with the regulatory authorities, work with payers, work with the commercial team, do all of the work that needs to happen in order to develop a new drug and ultimately to hopefully bring something important to patients.
So one thing that stands out about your experience through all of these different challenges is that you're super adaptable, which isn't always the case. Not just from a TA perspective, but from whether it's a leadership-oriented role where you're constructing whole business units with all of the international complexities that go with that, whether it's something where you're taking on a new role with promotion or things of that nature, or different scientific indications or modalities. Do you think that's a key trait for any experienced drug developer?
Oh, 100%. I think it's a requirement.
Yeah.
I think there are people certainly who can not be, let's call it learning agile. There's a group of people that certainly are really good in one discipline and can leverage their strength in that discipline to be fantastic leaders. My personal opinion is that in the modern era, in order to be the most creative and look for the most efficiencies, which is important in biotech in particular, having a broad range of experiences that inform your abilities to develop new drugs is critical, 100% critical. I also feel like, there's a principle in Buddhism about the beginner's mind, right? And I feel there's a tremendous amount of benefit to having that beginner's mind, right?
Can you explain exactly what that means?
Yeah, it's just, very simply, and I'm not a great Buddhist, but very simply, it's walking up to a new situation and loving it as if it were your first time.
Yeah.
And that's the way I approach new problems, right? And fortunately, I've continued doing this throughout my career. I learn from every new problem that I approach, and then when I get to something just a little bit new, beginner's mind, right? And I can look at things, and this is one of the benefits of being a pediatrician, in fact, of being a neonatologist, is that I don't have expertise in atopic dermatitis. But I know enough about medicine, and I know enough about immunology, and I absolutely know enough about drug development to approach the discipline of developing a new drug for atopic dermatitis with a background and a beginner's mind. So I can ask questions. I'm very happy to admit what I don't know, and love, in fact, when I learn something new. Yeah. And love not just learning something new, but being able to apply that new information or new knowledge to asking new questions, and then working with my team to develop strategies to answer those new questions. So I think the more experiences one has in drug development, the more failures one admits to and can learn from, the more yeses one says when asked questions about, hey, do you want to take on this new project? The better one becomes at filling up that basic part of your head, which allows you to construct new frameworks to address with a beginner's mindset the new problems that you address. That's
really good advice and pertinent when you think about physicians going to industry for the first time.
Yeah.
So what led you to Astria?
Yeah, Astria. It's so Astria. Part of it was timing. Part of it is a lot of it is the company itself and what the company is doing. I had a chance to join this company when they were about to start phase 1 for a new drug in hereditary angioedema, which is perfect timing, right? And the opportunity there is, hey, if I could get in as they're going to start phase 1, I have the chance to develop a program from start to finish de novo, which one doesn't get often in a drug development career. Life cycle 5 to 7 years from IND to new drug approval. Many of us are in roles for less than 4 years, so it's very uncommon for one to see a full first subject into new drug approval and launch. So here, great chance timing-wise to move in. Well, what got me about Astria from the very beginning was something on its webpage when I went to look up what this company was when a recruiter called me and said, hey, listen, there's this new role, check it out. And it was patients first, people always. And that's the company that's still there today, right? It is 100% focused on making patients better. Right now, the areas of focus are in allergy and immunology. The first candidate currently in phase 3 is in hereditary angioedema. We're thinking about other diseases as well with different drugs. But it's always focused on the
inflammatory space, though.
Yeah, allergy, immunology focused, and always patients first. It's putting patients at the center of everything we do, which goes back to my roots as besides wanting to be an astronaut, which I abandoned early, but then focusing on medicine, like 6, very early, and focusing on making patients ultimately better. And here I thought, all right, culturally, it seems like a place where I could not just make individual patients better, but also work to make communities of patients, in this case, hereditary angioedema, which is a rare genetic disease, and ideally other populations of patients better, and ultimately fulfill my mission. And this focus on the people too, I think is really important, because that to me is also an important attribute of being a leader in the space, is looking for those companies that have the best culture, and I'll define that as cultures that bring out the best in individual people, such that they work better as a team than as an individual contributor. And that's what Astria does. The culture at Astria is that we strive to make the team better than the sum of the individuals.
Very interesting. And with the people with the advice that you would give to people that are looking to get into drug development and make real impact, in addition to the adaptability that we touched on, what else would you suggest would be the top traits or things that they should consider?
There's two key ones.
Yeah.
And then there's a third, which I'll get into. The two key ones. So one is learning agility. So that's that adaptability piece that you talked about. Learning agility, the ability of a person to go from one topic to the other. And I'll go back to the beginner's mindset, approach a new problem as if a beginner, to learn as much as possible, as fast as possible, and do it in a way that is meaningful. Now, don't just go read a paper or read a textbook chapter or ask ChatGPT. You go out and you understand the community. You talk to physicians, you talk to scientists, you talk to patients, you talk to advocates, you talk to whoever you can, to learn as much as you can, as rapidly as you can. And there are some people who are very good at that, some people who love to do it, and therefore are good at it. There are others who aren't, and I think that's okay. I prefer to hire on my team people that aspire to learn well and can learn well. So learning agility, that's number one. The second is grit. And I didn't know what grit was until, I don't know, I mean, it's a word, of course, we all knew, but I didn't know what grit was until in drug development, probably until we had this advisory committee meeting I referred to back when I was working at Merck. I used to say that, back in the days when I was practicing, that you put your head down and you do whatever you can to break through that barrier that's making that patient not get better. And I learned this back in medical school. I was doing pediatric surgery as one of my required rotations. It was an elective part of my surgical required rotation, where the surgeon, it was about 3:00 in the afternoon, and we've been up since 5 in the morning, rounding and going into the OR, and the surgeon got a call about a sick patient in the ER that we needed to go take care of, and we had just sat down to eat. And he said, no, you don't eat if there's a patient who can't eat. So we had put down our food. The patient wasn't eating because he had to go to the OR. We did the operation. And, that was the kind of thing you did, because there was someone who was sick who needed to be addressed, and you did what you had to do. So that to me was my perception of what grit was. And then, back again into drug development, where everything happens at a little bit more slow pace, right? Drug development takes years instead of a patient getting sick and ultimately, hopefully better quickly. Grit was, back to this advisory committee preparation, focus. And not giving up. It was determination. It was looking for every opportunity, every way to take the principles of high integrity, data forward, science first, to bring forward what we think is a good drug. That's grit. Not letting things say no. Blue sky thinking, no restraints until there have to be restraints applied. And that, to me, has evolved over the years, right? And I look very carefully for people that I hire, and I would encourage most people who are thinking about going into leadership roles in R&D to do the same, who have grit, who don't give up easily, who thrive on looking for new opportunities, to asking new questions, to thinking creatively, for looking for efficiencies, things that may or may not have been done before, things that you learned in one therapeutic area that no one's ever thought about doing in the new therapeutic area. That's grit. And if you have those two traits, learning agility plus grit, I think the odds are very high you're going to be successful in drug development and in leadership, in biotech in particular.
So you think there's a direct correlation, not just with drug development, but leadership as well?
Absolutely.
So as a leader, you also have to demonstrate grit.
Yeah.
In the same way or a different way? Or?
You can't give up. Yeah, no, it's different, right? It's different. So it's especially different in pharma because, like I said, in pharma, you're on top of instead of inside, right? You're sort of orchestrating in pharma, whereas in biotech, even in the CMO role, I get to put my hands in and I get to actually
leading,
be gritful.
By example.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. It's leading by example. It's developing a culture of not giving up. I mean, obviously, if the data say no, then you stop, and you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to have that degree of determination to say, all right, the data are clearly saying no, you got to stop. But short of that, looking for ways to do as much as you can with as little as you have, and that's important. I will say the third one. We talked a little bit about transformational relationships, which is key. It's having a bit of fun along the way.
Yeah.
You have to. It's you have to stop and play every once in a while. And I like that concept just because I naturally like to play. I think it's a lot of fun.
That must have been good when you were a neonatologist.
Oh well, no, it isn't so much because the kids don't like to play back.
Really?
No, they're pretty sick, right? So there's not too much playing. Yeah. If the kids the little tiny babies we were taking care of had siblings, then sure, that were healthier, then we could play with them. That was that was fun. But I enjoyed playing sort of naturally. But I found that having fun playing, even in the most professional of senses, drives conversations in ways that conversations without fun wouldn't go. So people are more open and more creative. They open themselves up as people to form transformational relationships that ideally catalyze that learning agility and grit aspects that I've been talking about to make them the best they possibly can and then make the team the best it possibly can be.
It's a little bit of humor every now and again.
I do my best. Not always successfully, but I certainly do my best.
Do dad jokes?
Yeah, no, I don't do dad jokes. I don't have a very good memory, so I just can't remember a lot of jokes. I have a lot of friends who are very good at telling dad jokes because of their good memories.
When you look at your career to date, obviously it's ongoing, what key achievement stands out? That gives you that sense of fulfillment, I suppose, more than anything else.
It's a really difficult question because I think there's so many key achievements.
Yeah.
Obviously, the laws of recency apply. And the most recent standout key achievement was initiating this phase 3 trial in hereditary angioedema at Astria that we started in Q1 of this year. Great team to work with. Jill Milne, the CEO, is a tremendous CEO. Great leadership team. The medical science team in my company is wonderful. I mean, all of the colleagues that I've worked with to put this together, and it's most of the company that's touched this in some meaningful way. To have that first patient enroll into a phase 3 study, which I think is a super cool phase 3 study that ideally will transform how patients with this disease are cared for. And that's incredibly rewarding. Now we don't have data, right? This isn't like it's a brand new drug.
Yeah.
We don't have it's not a catalyst for the company per se because we don't have the data yet. And we certainly don't have this drug approved, but that was incredibly fulfilling, right? Not a transformational event yet, but setting us up for a potentially transformational event. So that's cool. I mean, there have been some monumental things that I've worked on that have been career changing, like the Shire acquisition at Takeda and the R&D integration. I mean, those are
a lot of moving parts in that, isn't there?
Yeah, there are.
I remember actually being on the other side of it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and it was a big talk. Yeah. And it sounds like it went well. So, because people in the UK, you have people all over, Switzerland, UK,
all over the place, America, all over the world,
in R&D as well,
affected by this. Yeah, in R&D and outside of R&D, it's two massive companies joining. And I mean, the day that the whole thing was done, the very first day of the new Takeda company, we were on Wall Street. I got to watch. I didn't get to ring the bell.
Was it during COVID?
No, it was 18.
Just after?
Yeah, 18.
Or just before?
Yeah. So we got to ring the bell. I didn't get to ring the bell, but the bell was rung by the leadership team at Takeda. And I mean, that day stands out as a tremendously impactful individual day, right? Which is great. But so many, I mean, I have had nothing but collectively amazing experiences in drug development. They're slower to come to than in medicine
because of the life cycle and just the nature of the beast.
Like especially in medicine and in intensive care, where it's there's a kid who's crashing and you go and you run a code and hopefully the baby survives and does well, right? And that's within 3 minutes.
Wow. And
in drug development, it's 7+ years, right? So it's different, but certainly there have been failures. Certainly there have been times when I've been working way too hard and have taken it out on unfortunately, my family in ways that I shouldn't.
What's your process for when you hit those
coping?
barriers?
Oh yeah, so that's important too.
I know you said you're into cycling, so I'm sure that was
sport. So sport and wine. And I don't mean it because I drink a lot. I don't. I think, but wine is important because it brings people together. Yeah. And intellectually, wine is a lot of fun too because there's just so much to wine. And I mean, there are a few of us who all have a common relationship back to Takeda, actually, who still communicate just about daily about wine. And one way
a wine tasting session where you taste it in your mouth properly and make
all
funny
that,
faces and all that kind of
all
stuff.
All that, right? And try to be as esoteric and pedantic as possible. And this is a case where the more pedantic you are, the better off you look among your peers. But I mean, it's an escape, right? But sport, especially, I'm a cyclist, as we talked about. It's you get that endorphin piece, and you go for a ride, and you build your body and you take care of it. To be an athlete, which I strive to be, it takes a lot of discipline as well, and I think a lot of us in this space are incredibly disciplined people. But for me, the important part about cycling is, frankly, the competition part, and it's a way for me to refocus some of that competitive energy into an outlet that keeps that drive of being better than somebody else out of being a leader in biotech, right? Yeah. The kind of leader I strive to be is a humble, authentic leader, not a patriarchal, top-down kind of boss, right? Yeah. In cycling, I get to be that, right? In cycling, it's about ego. It's about being out in front, right? It's about beating everybody else or doing your best to beat as many people as you possibly can. In drug development, it's about lifting the team. And so I get to put out that, right? I get to divert that sort of negative professional energy into something that is a bit more rewarding.
So there's one final question I wanted to ask you, Chris. Yeah. So if you were going to give one bit of advice for someone who's looking to move into the clinic, from the clinic into industry, what would that bit of advice be when they're going on that consideration or reflectory process? Well,
number one, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. I think if you're at all considering it, there have to be reasons to either you're being pushed or you're being pulled. And I think it doesn't matter. If you're being pushed, there is a lot of green pasture in drug development. If you're being pulled, follow your nose. It's amazing. You still have all kinds of opportunities to use your being a doctor brain in really very meaningful ways. But to take it one step further, I think you have to approach going from being a physician to biotech or pharma with not just the beginner's mindset that's becoming now overused here, but with an understanding that you're not going to be very good at this for a long time. And if that's something that's going to bother you, then don't do it, right? Despite everything I just said about doing it, don't do it. If you feel like you can't be humble and not be the one who knows everything there is to know because you were an expert in your particular medical field, then this might not be the right spot for you. You have to be able to walk in and say, listen, I'm going to be a complete idiot for 6 months, and I'm going to do my best, but I'm not going to know the vocabulary. I'm not going to know the process. I'm not going to know the people. You're not going to know what a payer is, perhaps. Things like this that you just have to admit that, all right, I'm going to take 6 whatever months to learn as much as I can, to contribute wherever I possibly can, and then you're going to be awesome, right? It's going to be like your career's going like this, and then it's going to go down, and then you're going to go right back up, and maybe you're going to go up at a faster rate than you ever have before. But you have to be able to do that.
The hockey stick, the famous hockey stick.
Yeah, right. And if fortunately, most people I've met and have had this conversation with have already determined that they're going to be okay with that gap of time in which they're not experts. But that is an important consideration for anyone who's considering going into the space.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, my pleasure.
If anyone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I have actually the best way probably is my phone.
But if they don't have your number?
If they have my number. If they don't have my number, then LinkedIn is a great way to do it. Email is fine. And then phone. I'm much better on the phone than I am.
Actually, I found that in ARTO's core business,
yeah.
Talent Solutions, 60% of my interactions now are over WhatsApp or text message, which is crazy, because I think 5 years ago you only really communicated via email, and it was all very it just was the way things happened. But people need
I understand that, and I see it. I just find that I can't get into a conversation in which I get to know somebody by 3 or 4 sentence exchanges.
I agree. It's the speed, isn't it? It's the need for speed all the time.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining me, Chris.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate your company.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.